worn this. I had to check to see if I've worn this shirt on an episode before. I'm like, I have a collection of black T-shirts, and I was like, is this a rerun already? We've only done like half a dozen.
Dude, it's a black T-shirt company. That's all I
It
wanted. That's all I wanted to make at first. It was like just nothing but black T-shirts.
A black T-shirt company, and then be able to make your own hats. Well, mission fucking halfway, almost there.
Yep, there it is. That, by the way, side note to Sornex, that is one of their fucking heaters, especially after you get the explanation.
Oh yeah, once you know what the what is. Oh yeah, it's real good.
That's one of my favorites. The closet.
Today.
Throw this thing on.
I'm wearing this today.
Yeah. And I got the new, look at this. This sucker.
Fits.
Woo! I like it.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, on air, good call on the reversing.
Oh, the color?
Yeah.
It was fun. When we showed that to me, I was like, oh yeah, that pops in a fun way.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, that's not fair. Is that caffeine?
So, they're not a sponsor, but this is Gorilla Mind's new energy. Oh, here it goes. Gorilla Mind's new energy drink. This is
I take anything. I take anything right now.
Live taste test. It is definitely tiger's blood.
I can confirm.
I can confirm. I've killed a tiger, and this is what their blood tastes like.
So I'm 31 hours into this fast. And the one thing I want more than anything else is the taste of any sort of shitty energy drink. That's the one thing that stands out that I like. There's other things that I'm into, but that is one thing that I've missed just sipping on that. Like, that's probably not great. Not even for the caffeine. I mean, I said this forever. Like, if they made, if whoever, Red Bull, Monster, I don't care. If they made those flavored drinks without the caffeine, like that like I would drink that all day, every day. So when you just that right there, that just got me in a weird way that nothing has got me into. Even Sophie last night, I was cooking a steak. She's cooking this beautiful fucking steak. And I was like, yeah, that sounds good or smells good or whatever. But I was like, fine. And then went on with it. And then just that little, because I know what that sound is. I was like, what's that?
That's a Pavlov response.
Oh, 100%. Because it made my first thing was like, I'm going to go get one. Like,
it's hilarious you said that, because think about your relationship to energy drinks to be that strong.
Mm-hmm.
Which I have the same thing. I can't pass a 7-Eleven without being like, Red Bull Monster.
Probably need one. probably could go for one.
11 o'clock at night. What are you doing?
I got shows to watch.
But yeah, anyway, that's ridiculous. But dude, let's talk about this fast, because it's important, and I think there's a lot of analogies, metaphors, and all that stuff here.
Yeah. So it's been a year a year plus of a lot of different adventures of different types of things, and finding different ways to do stuff that just makes me feel weird in a way. And it's the first time over the last couple of weeks that I recognize that, like, oh, you need to feel weird because there's a lot of life happening. Mm-hmm. I guess probably the most straightforward way to say it would be, I had allowed discomfort to find me rather than going to find discomfort as of late, to be real on the nose about it, with just like taking life things, not crazy stuff, not big stuff, whatever, just a lot of things. And I kind of had this thing of like, well, what's within my grasp, within my realm of not really having the time right now or the means to like travel or whatever, something like that. What's something that I can do that is something I've never done before that I think will produce some weirdness potentially. And I was flicking around. Izzy and I were flicking around on Disney Plus looking for stuff, and came across the Limitless Chris Hemsworth show. And I had watched a couple of them, but I hadn't watched the fasting one yet. And so we put that on. And as we were watching it, I was just immediately within like 5 minutes into it, I was like, that's it. That's the thing to do. Now he goes 4. And I was like, I think, because like 1, that's fine. I wasn't concerned about that. 2, I was like, no, that also seems doable. It's almost kind of like when we were talking about the hike. Remember when you first brought up the idea, or not the hike, the walk with me, and you were like 300 miles. And I was like, well, but what if we just did 2? And your answer was great. Your answer was, because if you do 2, you're going to be able to do it. And you're just going to wonder, could you have done 3? Essentially, I'm paraphrasing your language. But that's the way I thought about this too, which was like, okay, well, let's just commit to it being a thing that's longer. And this is, we've talked about this before. This is the beauty of how I think people miss the value of whether it's virtual communities, whether it's social media, whatever it is, it's the ability to say you're going to do a thing and now feel as though, not because you have a massive audience or anything like that, but you're just putting something out there that you're saying is a thing you're going to do. And it just adds in that little extra layer of accountability to it because you've now said it out loud with that. So we ripped into it. So it was, and actually I thought about it afterwards. It was really stupid. I was like, I'm going to do it 7 a.m. Monday to 7 a.m. Thursday. And if I was probably, I don't know, wiser, I would have just done like midnight Sunday to whatever. So technically, so I woke up Monday morning, and I was like, okay, I'm going to eat something before like we hit like the 7 o'clock mark. I was so just anxious about it that I like wasn't even like, I could barely even eat. I had like a shitty protein bar, some granola, and some yogurt. And like at like 6:50, here to go back, we were talking about at 6:59, I shotgunned a Monster. Like that, because I was like, this is it. You're going out hard. And so that was kind of the rip of it. Chill yesterday. Felt hungry for the first time, kind of middle of the afternoon, evening time yesterday. Started to get some pretty, like, so we're talking like 8, 9 o'clock. Pretty like little headaches, like almost like hangover headaches. And I had been drinking water, very aware of the necessity to drink water during this. But I had been like just chugging water, but I got like, I felt myself getting kind of pissy. And then this is some real masochistic shit. Sophie was like, hey, we need some more stuff for breakfast. This is just shows like kind of part of what you've done to me. She was like, we need more like breakfast type stuff. And because I'm kind of the way I am now, I was like, fuck it, let's go to the grocery store. So we went to the grocery store at 8 o'clock last night, and we were grocery shopping, Pop-Tart bites, all kinds of just delicious shit, almost as an extra way of me to be like, yeah, bitch, like you're in it now. So went to bed early last night and then woke up this morning. So we're about 24 hours into it. Everything that I read about, what kind of starts to happen during that time period, kind of happened this morning. Like I woke up this morning feeling great. Like I remember I woke up almost kind of like that little, like, what are we going to be like? Like, is this going to like, and Aces, the Garmin body battery thing. You have that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's like the Whoop recovery thing. I anticipated it just basically, the lowest it goes is 5. I've never seen it go below 5 before. And I just anticipated like waking up at a 5. Bro, it was a fucking 100. And I was like, I don't know what this means. And I'm aware that this is just gadget science and I'm not hooked up in a lab. But I felt that. I felt like great. And I still feel great. And here we are, it's 2 p.m. while we're sitting here chatting. And if this is the kind of vibrancy part of the ketosis that happens, I don't know, but like we're great. And it's kind of turned that corner a little bit in terms of like, I think this is what I was talking about this earlier. I think the craving of the food part has passed, right? Like I think I've gotten over the thing, and now we're on not quite on the back half of it, but on the back half of it where I'm like, unless I start to feel really, really bad in a way which I don't anticipate, like now it's become we're getting there, type thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you'll get there no matter what. I mean, I know.
No, I would say to that real quick too. There was never a concern that all of a sudden I was going to be walking by in the kitchen and just be like, ah! And just like fucking involuntarily rip open a bag of Doritos,
smash a fucking Hot
Pockets. Right? yeah. Just get one of the old beer can helmets and just put 2 Monsters in there and just sit on the couch and just be like, here we go. But it was a really weird thing mentally that kind of happened this morning, and so to the point of movement, right? I didn't have anything going on this morning. Got up and went out and went on a hike. Was feeling good and went and moved. because that was a thing that I was like, we're feeling good to do this, because there's a part of my brain that was like, you need to rest while you're doing this. You need to just relax and let this happen. But I was like, well, I'm going to listen to kind of how I'm feeling, and we're going to go out and move a little bit. So went out and chugged or chugged along, like, I don't know, like 5 or 6 miles or something like that this morning, just in the beautiful woods, feeling good. Just walking, baby. That's all it was. Just walking, listening to the Fast and Furious soundtrack, as one does at 8 a.m. Like, it was this weird thing about, like, I don't know how any of this makes sense right now, but like, I was vibrating on a level.
Too fast, too furious.
Too fasted for y'all.
Okay, so just a point. I think we made this point, but it's worth repeating, that both Ludacris and The Rock are in movies in which their stuff appears and they don't recognize it.
That their universe exists in the universe?
Yeah. Ludacris's music appears in Too Fast, Too Furious, but it doesn't matter. And then Rock wears his own gear.
Yep.
While not being The Rock.
His own Under Armour gear. And just like, this isn't a thing that we're going to talk about. and just I love too when he just rock bottoms people through things, which is not a normal. I mean, I've never been in a physical confrontation, but I don't think that's a pretty normal, like, if you and I were in a fight, I don't think the move you would choose to take me out would be to scoop me under your shoulder, turn around and put me through a table.
I'm going to do an internet search now to see if we can find a real life rock bottom.
Like, effective, practical, I'm not one to speak to. I'm just gonna be out here stunning people.
But like, so going through this whole process, and the fasting and everything else, one, what did you expect? And so for me, like, kind of the analogy or the metaphor, or even just a lesson that you're going through there. What's that feel like right now?
I needed a reset in a couple different ways. One, just in terms of not that anything had been weird or funky with diet or anything like that, but I felt like I needed a reset in terms of knowing what hunger is, in a way. Yeah. And pushing the edge a little bit of when I think I need that, just as a way to be curious about myself in terms of what my, not always the craziest about the phrase like relationship with food is, but my relationship with food for a really long time was I didn't really have one, or it was, a volatile relationship. Yeah. And then for the last 3 years, it's been a really structured, stringent relationship with food, right? I pretty much track probably 90% of the time, probably 95% of the time, because I like the element of like control that it gives me. And so I think I was curious about, well, in my brain, let's see what happens if we go the other direction for a little bit. Let's see what happens if we just, if me and food just took a little time apart. Let's just take a little break and see how we feel when we come back together with each other. And how much my goal of this, hopefully also, is to maybe help myself even more so simplify my eating. Not in any way other than just being curious about it. Not because I think that there's anything wrong with how I ate or anything like that, which I think is also kind of the point too, which is just doing this because I'm curious to see what happens.
Where does it reset you in terms of hunger? Because one of the things that I've always kind of been fascinated about, man, after being hungry, like really hungry, either fasting on purpose or accidentally, is that it reset what I knew hungry to be. So when I hear people say you're hungry, it becomes kind of a dog whistle for me to be like, I don't say anything, but it's just like, are you?
Right.
Because like, once you're hungry, like you're really hungry, you're like, oh, okay, like this is a different thing.
Yeah.
What I've been saying, like this is boredom, this is habitual, this is discomfort, this is a lot of things, but this is not like hunger.
Right. And I think I hit you up yesterday morning about that, right? Because one of my first things, so I had a thing I had to do in the morning yesterday, and then I got done with it around like 11 or so. And I was trying to like plan out like what I needed to do the rest of the day. And it was the very first thing I went to was, well, I'll just go home and get a little bite to eat and then think about it. Right. And how quickly stuff like that just becomes like it's just a little like food, how often food can just be a little transition thing for us between things, whether that's snacking or whether it's eating intentionally or whatever like that, and really realizing how much do I need that. Last night, I would say, again, in that evening time last night, I was hungry. Like I was like, yeah, like I was mad about it.
Yeah.
I was like mad about being hungry.
Yeah.
It's different today. I don't know if tomorrow's good or later today or tomorrow's going to change. Like right now, I'm good. Like this feeling I have right now, I'm good. Like this is because something's recentered.
I think it's standard, man. I think like when you look at when people go through fasting, it all kind of mimics the same timeline. I mean, granted, deviations exist or whatever, but so I think you're right.
Oh, it's right on with, again, everything that I read or everything that I whatever about it. Like I'm experiencing all that to like a T.
Nice.
In terms of like the feelings, whether that's, mental stuff or whatever. And at no point either. It's important, me, the king of quantifiers, which I try to do less of now, but I think this one deserves one. Even at that point when I was last night, like hungry, I was aware that this is somewhat of a habitual hunger that I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Not like you require sustenance to make it.
Yeah.
It was like there was a level of that habitualness. Yeah, like it's kicking in, or even like and then so the girls go to bed last night and whatever, and that's usually a time where I'll come and make one last little like drive by through the kitchen for just another little something, right? And that happened last night, and then I didn't do that, and I was like, oh, but you're also fine.
Yeah,
like you're okay.
Weird.
So yeah, science also, just for the sake of interesting things, I weighed 5 pounds less than I did this morning when I weighed myself. Yeah, whatever that is. Now, does that have to do with I'm not gonna lie, probably on Sunday night when I knew this was coming, I did have like 2 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches really late and some other things because I was like, let's just gear up. But
I mean, you can't really beat peanut butter.
You really can't. I'll share it when we're done. I've been collecting like a notes list on my phone. When I think of a food I want, I just write it in there.
So
cinnamon rolls, string cheese.
Yeah,
it's a lot of random stuff.
I was that guy when I was going through tier school, which is basically POW school in the Army. But when I was going through that school, I was the guy who kept a list of food.
Yeah.
Right. I think I still have it somewhere around here, and it's like lasagna, clam chowder, just ridiculous shit, man. And then for like months afterwards, I felt like my stomach was a black hole. Which couldn't get full.
Yeah.
It's a whole nother gamut. But yeah, that's wild. So good, man.
Well, I think I got one more thing on it.
Go ahead.
Is that I'm very, you asked me kind of how your phrasing was in terms of like, what to expect or whatever like that. Another thing I'm really looking forward to is not when it's over. I have no intention of just being a dick about eating. Like, oh, I chose to not do this for 3 days. Now we've talked about this before. I'm not going to just celebrate that thing by then just doing the opposite of the thing I did. Right. Yeah. And doing it all in a way. So, and there's a couple people who actually hit me on Instagram that are also doing it. And I'll share that with you off here to not blow their spot up. But it was only for the intention of just needing to just kind of fuck with myself a little bit in a good way.
I think this is honestly, this is the way I look at it. To me, this is a version of Misogi.
Yeah, you beat me. Yeah.
Yeah, because to me, it's the same thing as like when we talked about with some of the guys before. Is physically, I know most of you are going to do the thing. If I ask you to go walk 100 miles, you'll walk 100 miles. If I ask you to go lift 1,000 pounds, you'll go lift. You know what I mean? They'll do the thing, and they'll die trying. But then there are people who like they can do all those things, but if I ask them to speak in front of a group of crowd or a crowded room, that's their misogi. That's their I don't know if I can do this moment. Right. And it's the same thing with food because, one of the things I learned like throughout the process of doing the bodybuilding shows is like how many people start their qualifier for bodybuilding with I can't about food.
Yeah.
I could never about food.
Yeah.
And all the while not knowing that like I pretty much just travel and exist to go eat at new food spots.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, not that we're the same, but just like, that's my jam. I'd rather
Oh yeah.
do that than anything else. And people were like, I could never like to go. And but it's also interesting because people just assume that about you because you lift weights.
Right.
People will assume that you're this person who just only eats ground turkey and rice, which.
Oh yeah. Hell no.
But there's also there's a thing that we should probably like talk about here, and it's the beauty of simplicity when it comes to food and meal prep.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like how many people spend hours poring over Pinterest to find a meal that is just this.
Yep.
Zucchini slices and
cherry tomatoes and all your avocados sliced real pretty, lined up in a bowl.
Like, dude, I like Hasselback potatoes, but I'm not making.
Right.
Not for a Tuesday.
Right. Not for a Tuesday.
Not for a Tuesday, man. It's a Saturday, kids in the kitchen that we're making it a project type thing, but not on Tuesday where I just got to scarf this thing down in front of a screen before I take 3 Zoom meetings back to back.
Right. The way I was talking to somebody else about it, I was having this conversation with somebody else that I work with in nutrition coaching, and they were asking me kind of about that same thing. And a way I told them, and I didn't realize it until I thought about it, a way I think about the way that I eat normally is I'm not like a person who will go hard on like single ingredient stuff or whatever, things like that. I mean, that's wonderful. Again, if you've got the space and time to that, but I look at things as like with foods, like what things in terms of even like macros and stuff, I want to make foods date. So I'm going to figure out which of these foods date each other well in terms of how I'm pairing things together. Not in a way of like pairing things together, but in a way of just like bagel, cream cheese. There we go. Carbs, fats, like that. I like to eat in that way. I like to eat things that are mostly one thing combined with another thing that's mostly the other thing.
Yeah.
So like a carb, a fat, and a protein or whatever, rather than something that's like 40 grams of carbs, 19 grams of fat, and 20 grams of like I like to take things and just like, you all didn't know you were going on a date today, but spoiler alert, here we go.
Yeah, I get it. That's for me, it's more like the big ones I consider macros. So I consider food taste, but the other one is digestibility has become a huge deal since doing the bodybuilding shows. So
I'm sure.
I try to really pay attention to things that just digest well. Which also goes into the whole like resiliency piece that I coach, man. Like my thing is like, if you can't eat red sauce and you're eating red sauce and it's keeping you up at night and you wonder why you're an asshole the next day.
Sure.
Go figure, right? So that's become more and more important. But other than that, yeah, it's the same thing. Like one of the other things I learned is like, I don't like ground meat without a carb.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Mm-hmm. Ground meat's terrible without a carb. So, and if I have to eat ground meat without a carb, then that's where eggs come in because they get all fancy chef like bus yolks in slow motion.
Fancy and bus yolks.
Bus
yolks.
But yeah, man, that's I don't know. I thought that was an interesting piece that I think we've seen both this week, that people trying to over chefify. I don't know. It's not even fucking.
I think you can apply that to a lot of stuff, right? You can. I mean, in terms of even just breaking things down into a simpler component and what you can get. I mean, we were talking about that in one of the group calls the other day, right? And even using that as the kind of analogy for it is, choose experiences that are more single ingredient experiences.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I think you had a little bit of that with the Two Wolves experience that you had and what that was all about. And, I think that sounds like an incredible thing that probably created some of that same concept.
Yeah. The Two Wolf thing is, most, and this is the idea I've had is like most of my core memories, most of the memories that I actually give a shit about, have been simple ingredient memories.
Mm-hmm.
Food, fire, friends, right? Friends, water, hangout, conversation on a deck, right? A walk holding hands, like just simple shit, man. Mm-hmm. None of the, I'm not going to say none, but like most of these core memories are like things I care about as far as like memories I want to hold on to when I'm an old man are like very complicated. They're not the crazy ones. And even if they are the crazy ones, it's the moment within the crazy ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Two Wolf was amazing. So just to explain it to everybody, Two Wolf Foundation is a nonprofit for combat veterans that takes combat veterans into the wilderness to do stewardship. I didn't even know what you meant by stewardship until I did this, but this is like taking care of the trails, lands, public lands, making sure that they're clear, making sure that like certain paths are cut off so we can keep certain areas pristine and like they were in 1776, right? And so we went out on our particular one and we went and built some fencing to keep some areas that they're not off limits, but the trails to get there, there's only one or two ways to get there. And people were creating their own trails. So we went out and built some fences and hung out and met with local guys and they helped and everything else, man. And it was fantastic, dude. First of all, I didn't know people. I didn't realize how many people are out here who are just fanatical about public lands, which is
just taking care of space.
Yeah, like I don't think a lot of Americans recognize the whole public land thing in the first place. But then to meet people who's like on their off time or their whole job is like just having public lands and not just like, this is my job, I showed up. Like the guy from Tread Lightly, dude, this guy showed up, was pumped up, was ready to roll. He was excited, and it wasn't an act, and it wasn't like a 3-hour thing. It was the 2 or 3 days that we were with him. He was ready to roll, talk about trails, get stuff done. And I was like, man, this is exciting, man. Because whenever somebody's, we talk about it all the time. Whenever somebody's excited about their thing, it brings a little spark, right? A little extra flame.
I'll listen to anybody talk about something they love.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did that, and then we got to visit. We visited 3 forest national parks, and so we went to the Bitterroot, which is in Montana. Absolutely gorgeous. Like if you guys have never been to Montana, don't go, because I don't want you to see what I saw. It's not beautiful.
It's for me.
It's for me.
You definitely don't want to go there.
No, you don't want to go there. But no, but seriously, man, like I had the same reaction in Montana I had in Hawaii, but for same reason, different place, right? I remember getting off the plane in Hawaii and driving towards North Shore, being like, I can't believe this. And like just like simple little phrases just kept coming out of my mouth and I couldn't control it. Fuck, that's beautiful. Oh man, that's beautiful. Like just like 30 minutes.
Man. Oh man. Yeah.
And then so now we're driving around in Montana and I'm just like, can't be mad at that. That's all I can muster.
You just turn into a grandpa. That's what happens. It just accelerates you real fast into just an old man who just says little things like that. Can't be mad.
Dude, we're just driving. Like, there's something about like that vertical next to a creek on a road.
Yeah.
And just again, simple things and beauty. And I was just like, this doesn't make sense how awesome this is. Right? For a guy who's wanted to see Montana for years now, it was very expectations were surpassed.
Right.
And so then we went into northern Idaho. We went to Salmon Chalice and and we went to Yellow Jacket Lake. First of all, whoever didn't tell me about northern Idaho,
shame on you.
Yeah, shame on you, right?
Well, they probably didn't say it because for some reason you don't want people to know about Montana. They're like, no, you don't need to go there.
The real reason why they didn't tell us is because no one has cell phone service in Northern Idaho.
That sounds beautiful.
Yeah, there's like no cell service. Great, right? But it was I was just, I couldn't muster the words to just express how crazy beautiful this stuff was. And so I'm riding with this guy. He works with Horses for Heroes, and he's basically an old cowboy dude now. He's not old, he's my age. Cowboy dude, and Tim, and he's just like, if I ever stop realizing how awesome this is, he said, I'm gonna need somebody to like take me out back. And I was like, yeah. think you're right. Like, and that's the only sentiment I could really get from it. And then it was one of these things, man. It's like, you continue to learn lessons or relearn lessons. And that lesson is just that, like, there's nature in medicine. There's nature in medicine and being away and being, again, in simplicity, man. Something about 6 dudes around a campfire, telling tales, sharing stories, be it deep or just jokes, right? I think there's something to that not enough people, but specifically men, especially dealing with all the stuff that we talk about with men that's not right in the world today. One of my ideas is that that's what it is, right? Which is a catalyst for Warpath stuff. FYT, find your tribe. I just don't think enough men have enough of a tribe or enough of these moments. And for me, it was another experience or lesson, relearning that lesson again. Like, even me, man, like, I knew I needed a break. It wasn't until I was in it where I was like, oh, not only did I need a break, I needed to be around dudes who I could just be like that with.
Yeah.
And so that was it was really cool, man. And I have the utmost respect to Brian and those guys. Brian's going to be on the podcast. The guys who run Two Wolf. It's a fantastic organization. If you can be a part of it, be a part of it. If you want to help support it, you should. And I will forever be a part of it if I can, man. That was a great experience, and I think more guys should see it, do it. And if you're not doing it because you're not a combat vet, then I think you should start your own, or you should just get a group of homies together and whatever. I will be purchasing a Forerunner and going full bore is my plan. But yeah, man.
Do you think that one of the reasons why that's not a thing that is a natural way for people to just kind of congregate sometimes is because once you get around that kind of setting, this is happening live, but my thought is I wonder if one of the reasons why it's challenging for people to just get in those settings and have those conversations, not the people who choose to get there, but people to want to go there, is because there's a lot of value put in that if we're going to spend time together, there has to be some sort of a thing that we're talking about or doing while we're spending time together, right? So like we're going to go to a football game together, or we're going to go to the bar together and watch the game or anything like that. Once you put somebody in that situation where it's just like community without really like event thing there, then that requires that conversations can go many different ways. Like you said, it can be sometimes, I mean, we've been in many of them together. Sometimes it just turns into everyone sitting around laughing their asses off, telling funny stories about things. And other times it goes to a place where it's like, oh, we're having like we're doing this deep conversation about this thing. Yeah. And I imagine that's probably intimidating, that it's like unstructured hangs.
I've never thought that, man. Maybe. I think
not for you. I know not for you, but I'm saying I wonder why that's, if that's a reason why that's, avoided isn't the right word. And maybe I'm not even saying it right, because
I think it's before all of that.
Yeah.
What it is, my personal take is like, again, and fuck it, we'll do it live, right? Is you get married, you get a girlfriend, right? Now the operative thing to do is to spend time in that relationship. And most people, I think, their relationships become their only thing. This is why you hear, I think, a lot of guys, they're like, oh, we don't see Tim no more. We don't see John no more. He's with Sally or whatever, right? Like, that becomes a thing, and there's no longer a space for your dudes, right? And I think even more so, like, there becomes this external invisible pressure that you need to do, that you don't have time to do these things. You're supposed to be doing.
Well, that's interesting, because maybe what we're talking about is it's making time to do nothing, but it's nothing with a purpose. And I don't mean nothing like nothing. I mean like unstructuredness.
I don't even personally, like I said, I don't even think it's the unstructuredness. I think men thrive in two ways, right? I think it's amongst each other and doing things. Now, doing things doesn't have to be poignant. And then like we fucking like again, you can build a fence together. Next thing you know, you're like, we're friends.
Right.
Like me and you, we're friends now.
Yeah.
And it's like those are the ingredients are dudes, do thing, fire. Magic. Right?
Well, and then if you sprinkle in then the element of the suffering on top of it, if it's 97 degrees out while we're building a fence, and then afterwards we go eat or whatever. Now this thing has now turned into a multi-level layered of connection.
Yeah.
Between this thing we did.
I think that's the main move, and I think that's important. I think that's all. Again, a lot of guys don't have it, and they're not experiencing it, and it doesn't have to be out in Salmon Chalice, amongst the stars. Like, hopefully, I pray you get a chance to do that, whoever you are, right? But there's just as much value in that sitting around an Airbnb with 10 dudes you barely know after you just got done doing crazy breathing exercises and boxing, right? Like, or if you just took a hike together or whatever the thing is.
Well, probably a real similar thing happens with, I imagine with, because you've done one. I don't know if you've done more than one, but I haven't yet, but like the 50 for the Fallen events.
Yeah.
Like that's after that type of event together.
50 for the Fallen. It's along the same lines of our entire premise here at Completely Unreasonable. And that's like two things make strong relationships in my experience. And you even said it already. Suffering together and food. And so what Chad and 50 for the Fallen has managed to do is put together these ruck marches all over the country where you walk 50 miles. And somewhere along the lines, everybody's point is different. The joking stops. Not that people aren't having fun. It's not what I mean. But somewhere along the line, it gets quiet. And you start thinking. You start really turning out. And what happens is any pretense that you wanted to portray or show up with will vanish. Right? It's kind of like long form podcasts. Like you can only pretend to be somebody else for an hour before the real you shows up. Or dating. Right? Like once the real you shows up, it's whatever. But like, here's the deal. One of the things that we know to be true is that if I break you off in a training session, the real you is going to show up. So at mile 25, at mile 30, the real you shows up. But it's also where some of the coolest conversations happen. It's where some of the conversations happen. And then for what 50 for the Fallen is, especially for me, you're walking in remembrance of men who are gone. Not just men and women who are gone. And so laughing and joking, it's not all solemn. It's not at all. I laughed my ass off, and I had a great conversation with Brian Peters during my 50 for the Fallen about a lot of things. But then also somewhere along the lines, when I was walking, it was in total utter remembrance of my friends, people I've served with, but didn't know, names I just saw. And then you start to think, and you're like, holy shit, like this is a pretty heavy thing. But this goes along with the idea for me. There's this idea that as long as we are talking about those people, our friends, our family, our loved ones, then it's never really death. Your legacy is preserved, right? And so every opportunity you get is a chance to remember them. And I think that's what it is, right? And Chad will be on here as well to talk about this and all his experiences with it. But for me, that's what 50 for the Fallen was. It was it's a mini Misogi, man. For some people, that's a legit Misogi. For me, it was an eye opener that I had more, and that I needed to push the boundaries a bit further. But it's important.
One interesting through line through all this stuff we're talking about, whether it be that or going out to the middle of Idaho or or fasting or powerlifting or whatever it is and I'm seeing these. I mean, there's a lot of just, things that are happening live here. The through line of this stuff that I now find myself being interested in is stuff that is going to help me see when does the real me show up, and is who I think the real me is the real me out of just hypothetical real me. Like what is it, a thing that's going to get me to that point where it's like this is now an edge. Mm-hmm. This is now a boundary. And especially when it's a thing you said you were going to do, what now happens? Because it's all things also, which I think is the point. Don't do that. That's not nice. It's all things again that you don't have to do.
Yeah.
Right? These are all things that it's like, I'm going to make a choice to do a thing. And if you look at all these things too, right? An interesting thing around all these, whether it's just walking or whatever it is, all these things we're describing here are all things that have very little cost of entry to them. Everything that we've just described here in one form or another. Sure, that might require some travel or whatever, but for the most part, you're not talking about, hey, I need you to go on this adventure with me and you need to bring your own $50,000 snowmobile. Yeah. It's like, hey, come to this place and we're going to walk a lot.
I think one of the things I've come to realize is like I am after experiences and moments. And while there are moments and experiences that I'm after that cost dollars, most of them cost physical effort and time. And the payoff, the payback is fairly large. Because even if you don't have an overlanding rig, you can go camp.
Sure.
Right. You can park at the base and hike in. Right. You can rent one. Right.
Yeah.
There's a company called Hatch Adventures that we had one of the vehicles for that week. That's what it was. It was a rental overlanding vehicle.
Well, everything's scalable too, right? I could go to Target and I could buy a $40 tent, exactly. and I've got a metro park and a place over here I could go camp if I wanted to camp.
Exactly.
It does. That's the other thing that I think is becomes the impediment for stuff is that, we've talked about this before. I think maybe this kind of relates to the grand gesture thing, but I'm not sure. That like, well, it's only worthwhile if I'm going to do that, I need to go to Idaho to do it.
Well, here's a great one. Right? So I had a call this weekend with a guy. I love him to death. But this lines up perfect. He calls me and he's like, B, I need some help. Like, I've been doing all the things. I'm on the path, man. I'm journaling. I'm training every day. I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to do. And life doesn't feel how I thought it was going to feel. And I was like, so what did you think it was going to feel like? So he explains and we're talking. I'm like, so what is it you're after? What is it that you want? He's like, adventure. And then I'm like, sweet, like adventures everywhere, right? And then so we're talking and we get to the point and he goes, so how do I know? How do I know that I'm going to pull this lever and this action is going to happen? And I'm like, oh, I see what's happening here. You don't get a guarantee. What you get is to pull the lever and the fucking numbers roll. And maybe you get trip sevens. Maybe you pull the lever and you just get nothing. Nothing lines up. I was like, but then there becomes this piece of like, what skills do you have to make adventure happen? And one of those, I will call it a skill, the ability to suffer and make decisions while suffering is what leads you to there. And I say all this just to be like, all of these things are adventure. All of these things are some form of an adventure that leads to a moment or an experience that you want to be able to recall later on. I think it's later on in life, right? Because if we look at things and we look at it on scale, man, like, why are you doing this? So you can put an Instagram post, which is fine. I'm okay with that. I'm not going to ridicule you because you want to fucking Instagram post, right? But I would say that the larger reason is probably, and like I've talked about this, is like, imagine, close your eyes, imagine yourself at 80 years old. What does 80-year-old you want to bother your partner about? Right? I listen to my dad tell stories all the time about what it was like to be a cowboy, what it was like to be a soldier, what it was like to be an adventurer, a wild man, a guy who raced cars. And my mom's like, because she's heard the stories for the last since 1978, right? And so I was thinking, I was like, if I close my eyes and I fast forward and I'm 80 years old, like, what do I want to bother my partner with? What do I want to borrow? Like, I want my lady to get mad at me telling that story about salmon chalice, right? And so I think it's a beautiful framework to make decisions too. Like, not that we went there, but somehow we're here. But I think it's just a beautiful framework to end up making your decisions in life. And like, if you want to be an adventurer, you got to do adventurous shit. That does not mean you're guaranteed adventure. It means that you are at the starting point.
Right.
You show up to Lake Salmon Chalice and it's chill and there's no adventure. So you got a choice to make. You can go stir up trouble, or you can just fucking take pictures of the dope mountain in the background, grill food or whatever.
Way I think about it is in terms of this just made me think of that is, if you're going to think about someday, however long that is down the road at your wake or at your funeral, I'm now interested in there not just being at some place where all the things of remembrance of me are. I'm not interested in there just being one picture of me doing one really cool thing. I want it to be a poster board, multiple poster boards that are full of a bunch of pictures.
Yeah.
That someone is going to stand there and they're going to go like this and look at it and read them all and see all the pictures and see all the different types of things in that way. It's that stack of undeniable proof.
Yeah, it's that too, man. And just to tie this in, because I think this is important to you and it's important to me, and it's come up several times this week as a dad, right? Like, there's this thing where I think a lot of people retreat from their adventures and dreams and desires because they're parents now. And there are certain factors, like maybe you got to make ends meet, and so all your time is spent doing that. And like, that's a different thing. We can cross that bridge too. But if you're in the position to pursue some of those things, be it the simple ones or the extravagant ones, I think that you kind of have a duty to do that, because part of your role is to, one, show that your dreams don't die and that you can pursue, or else how else do they learn this? Right? It's another client I talked to this week was saying like his son doesn't feel very adventurous to him, and he wishes his son was adventurous. And I asked him, I was like, "Are you adventurous?" He was like, "No," and I was like, "So where else would he?" Right. And so I think it's the same thing. Like, how else are they going to learn this, know this, or feel this? Now, there's a point of diminishing returns. You got to establish that between your kids, because certain kids' threshold for you being gone is fucking silly. Whereas other kids are like, "Dad'll be back. I'll see him on Thursday."
Right.
And also they're including them in it, which I think you're brilliant at doing as well. Like, I just think there's a thing there where a lot of, and again, just speaking from the man side of the house, like I've never been a chick before, but like, it's like, it's like, I think you owe that on some level to your family and friends and yourself, because it's like, how else do you demonstrate those things? And again, they don't have to be grand. I have a friend who just wants to fly fish, and he should probably go fly fish. All his kids know that, and so he actually does it. And so he has stories too. Because I think the other thing, and we talked about this on text message this week, is like, experience is king. It's king in communication. It's king in like how you are able to come across to people, and just the whole nine. And so for me, small rant, remarks complete.
It's a good one.
Go experience and do the things.
And take it down to simple ingredients if you're not sure what it is.
Yeah.
That's all it starts with. I mean, the thing I thought about when you're talking about kids, I've taken my kids and we've done stuff like, whatever, like Dave and Buster's and all that kind of stuff, which rules and definitely has a place. I can't tell you any real or too many real specific memories of a time that we went to Dave and Buster's. Dave and Buster's is cool. This is not an anti-Dave and Buster's statement. But when you're going there, there's a lot of stuff that happens, and then it just kind of gets left there, and then we go on, right? It's a very concentrated fun. It's not a type 2 fun. It's a very concentrated thing that this is this moment, this is where we did the thing, and then now it stays here. Versus we're gonna, on 4 days' notice, pack up and go to Kentucky and go see SmackDown and have breakfast with Phil and go ride horses because this is a thing that we just decided to go do off of a whim versus like this is a place where we know. I guess maybe that's the way I think about it. The way I think about my kids is I used to think about it as where do we go to do stuff where fun happens? And now I look at it as, well, we can make fun doing anything.
Yeah.
And so let's go play with what those different things are and see what kind of fun we can make there, because we had a lot different type of fun when we were at the Kentucky Horse Park, and it was a blast. And both of my kids talked about it all summer. That was the thing. That was the thing for them. That was like that. We did a lot of shit this summer. That was the thing of the summer, right? When Izzy went back to school in 4th grade, everybody writes their little, what did you do over the summer thing? That's what she wrote about, was that thing, right? Because that was a thing that is a simple ingredient of doing that thing.
Good. You just gave me an idea, something I need to do big time. So thank you for that. And then I guess to get ready to land this plane here in a minute. Speaking of being a dad and kids and everything else, man, I saw this quote from the book The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. And I thought it was pretty good, especially as a guy who grew up with a family who says, I love you all the time. And in a family of people who say, I love you all the time, it's that thing that happens when you get upset with people. Even just there's too much going on. And so I thought this quote was like pretty dope, and it made me think about my kids and my family and how I view things versus how I don't always say. And it says, sometimes I want to say I love you all, said the mole, but I find it difficult. Do you, said the boy. Yes, so I say something like, I'm glad we're all here. And I was like, I don't know, it got me, and it got me good too. It also made me think about in Idaho and in Montana, there were several moments where I just kind of had that feeling of like, oh, we're all here. And so
that just got me going. I'll turn in thinking of things that are said and even thinking of the things that my kids say that are variations of that are little phrases they'll say that I'm like, oh, that's a new way of saying that same thing.
Yeah, it got me because it made me think, because I'm always on the road, man. I'm always gone. I've been gone. And then when I come home sometimes, like kids will say something and it doesn't trigger right away. And then it'll trigger, like I'm laying in bed at night and I'm like, oh shit. Like,
yeah,
that's what she's saying. Like she's saying like, Dad, you just need to be.
Yeah. Yep.
There it is. So I guess in closing, family, food, fire, friends, simple ingredients. Go out there, have a good time, be unreasonable, and check out Two Wolf. Check out 50 for the Fallen. Donate if you can. If you can't donate, show up, especially for 50 for the Fallen. Their next one's 9/11 Shanksville, and then we'll be in Green Bay for I think it's Veterans Day weekend in November.
November.
And that's it, man. Got anything?
No, you did it.
Be excellent. See you on the path.